It would be cruel to make you all stay standing during my sermon. Jeez. First of all, we want to give great thanks to our Cantor Laureate, Sarah Sager, and our incredible quartet, and Jonathan Moyer, our accompanist. Thank you. You sound heavenly. Heavenly. Thank you so much. How beautiful. Thank you for lifting up our holiday. Good Yontif. Rabbi, why do you need to bring up politics in every single sermon you deliver? Rabbi, I believe your responsibility as our clergy is to lead us with Jewish values in navigating this distorted world. This is not political. It is ethical. And as long as all of us are free to express those feelings, we dare not feel hopeless. Please, Rabbi, remain courageous. Rabbi, I like you. That's never good when they start like, Rabbi, I like you, but I only come to temple to hear the prayers, not politics. Thank you, Rabbi, for speaking truth to power tonight at Shabbat services. More than ever, we need our rabbis to speak out. Rabbi, I will never forget the way you took care of our family after our father died, but I come to temple for comfort, not politics. These quotes are true adapted messages I have received via text, email, and in person. Make no mistake, I listen to and take seriously every piece of feedback or advice that comes my way. The question of whether politics belongs in the synagogue is an age-old one. Some of us were raised at temples where the weekly sermon touched on topics ripped from the headlines, or we could count on the High Holy Days to explore a topical message about the current state of affairs. Others were raised at synagogues where coming to a worship service meant exchanging the concerns of the secular world for a sacred few moments of peace. Certainly, the respected rabbis of our legacy temples all spoke eloquently about the issues of their day. Abba Hillel Silver delivered an impassioned speech at the United Nations in 1947 in support of the establishment of a Jewish state. And in the Freedom Summer of 1964, Arthur Lullyveld spoke powerfully from the pulpit following a tangle with white supremacists who left him with a giant welt under his eye. Still, in our increasingly polarized society, bringing politics into the congregational arena can be fraught. When does our faith demand its leaders and community to speak out on world issues? And when should we hold close to the more spiritual teachings inherent in our tradition that keep politics at a fair distance? Importantly, does a faith community as a whole have the right to opine about issues that hold great complexity and nuance? In an article titled "Why I Keep Politics Off the Pulpit," the well-respected spiritual leader and conservative rabbi David Wolpe once said, "All we hear all day long is politics. Can we not come to shul for something different, something deeper? I want to know what my rabbi thinks of Jacob and Leah, not of Pence and Pelosi." As a counterbalance, my equally learned and respected colleague, Rabbi Shai Held, also a conservative rabbi, said, "Demanding that politics be kept out of shul is like demanding that Torah be kept out of shul." Interesting. Historically, we have models for the intersection of politics and religion. It was the church and its pastors who provided hope and succor for the black enslaved people in the midst of America's original sin. As Hitler's reign took hold, it was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German Lutheran pastor, who publicly opposed the Nazi regime, even risking his life. Famously, black Christians and American Jews joined together to play a critical role in the civil rights movement. And in the 1970s, synagogues and its leadership served as an engine of support and political pressure to release the refuseniks from the Soviet Union. How many of you remember having a special seat at the Passover table for our Soviet brethren who couldn't be there? These were all let my people go moments. And even so, the church establishment has not always stepped up to use their power and leverage to speak out for the needy, helpless, and imperiled. In fact, there are many examples of faith leaders using their influence as a bludgeon to keep the weak down and to terrorize the most vulnerable. We need only to look at the Roman Catholic Church and the popes who championed the Crusades and later the Inquisition. Sadly, the church was mostly silent as the darkness of the Holocaust closed its fist around Europe. Places of worship can serve a unique role in providing a moral compass during tense times, or act as a dreaded force of evil and destruction. At fraught moments throughout my career, I have pondered when I should use the pulpit to, as we say in the pastoral business, comfort the afflicted or afflict the comfortable. I've striven to read the room and discern when to speak up politically and when a more spiritually focused and less political sermon is merited. The calculus of such decision-making is more of an art than a science, but there are times when it's appropriate for a rabbi to rally the community. In turn, there are crises when the community presses its rabbi to say something, to do something. I get those emails too. To be sure, rabbis are not prophets, and it can be seductive for spiritual leaders to believe that they are. Contemporary Rabbi Jason Herman said, "Rabbis are better being rabbis than prophets." The most famous of the justice prophets, think Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, were in a category all their own. These giant figures from Jewish scripture thundered from on high, admonishing the people and warning them how God was perceiving them. The world of the prophets was black and white, good and evil, right and wrong. However, rabbis, like the post-biblical sages who existed in their day, are meant to provide guidance and lift up values for the people they serve. While rabbis are people of God, we should never speak for God. As such, we can explore nuance and allow for alternative opinions. It is in our knowledge-seeking humility that we gain the respect and ultimately the power to make a difference. My colleague in Chicago, Rabbi Andrea London, teaches, we need to be humble enough to admit that we can never know for sure exactly what God wants from us. Claiming one is acting in God's name has brought so much death and destruction to our world. The religious impulse must be that we are dogged about pursuing justice and peace while simultaneously pushing ourselves to grow in empathy for those who don't share our views. We need to continuously question ourselves and our motives so that we don't fall prey to our own hubris. Every once in a while, rabbis have ego issues. This is a good thing. It's a good cautionary tale. And the role of rabbi, or really any Jew, comes with great responsibility and the obligation to weigh different viewpoints before proclaiming authority on an area of public concern. The philosopher Immanuel Kant coins this approach epistemic humility. The word epistemic comes from the Greek meaning knowledge or to understand. Thus, epistemic humility requires the courage to recognize one's own cognitive limitations and a humble willingness to change one's mind. Think of that in this culture today. Epistemic humility. It is in this very moment in our country when our leaders could use a healthy dose of epistemic humility. America was founded on sound principles of democracy, which allow for debate, dissent, and curiosity. In 1791, a very young United States of America adopted the Bill of Rights. In it, the First Amendment allows for freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and that is how we, the Jewish people, a minority in this country, are observing our faith publicly right now in our own houses of worship. Thank God for the First Amendment. The practice of freedom of speech with reasonable limits to protect the safety, of course, of the greater community, invites citizens to voice views not shared. In light of recent events, most notably the murders of Minnesota State legislator Melissa Hortman and her husband, and activist Charlie Kirk, and of course the subsequent suspension of Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show, it is alarmingly evident that our nation is moving dangerously towards epistemic arrogance. I've seen this in our own Jewish community. I cannot remember an issue that has polarized the Jewish people more than the current crisis in Israel, which has politicized discourse in our own houses of worship. One's ardent support of Israel might be interpreted as insensitivity to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Alternatively, the mere suggestion of sympathy for innocent Palestinians awakens suspicions of one's Zionist inauthenticity. I've witnessed upsetting examples of public shaming and slander in an effort to stump for one's cause. Sadly, perspectives on the war emerge as a litmus test for one's legitimacy as a Jew. One member of our temple accurately put it that Israel and Gaza, the Israel-Gaza war, is cleaving the Jewish people. Make no mistake, such actions do not represent the essence of the ideals of Judaism. Our faith was built on dissent and debate. Nearly 1,000 years of oral law, the basis of the Talmud, highlights sharp debate. The rabbis, in their great wisdom, practiced epistemic humility. They knew that the rigor of debate and legitimate dissent would sharpen their minds, enhance our faith. That's what it's about, being constant learners. They knew that the rigor of debate and legitimate dissent would do that, and the sages of old were not without ego, but they also knew that lifting up another's opinion would ultimately redound well to the resilience and legitimacy of our faith. Assuredly, Rabbis Silver and Lullivell knew this too, and practiced their faith as such. Famously, Hillel and Shammai, two contemporary sages at the turn of the Common Era, vigorously debated hundreds of issues. If the Talmud issues its greatest hits, there was like a greatest hits of the Talmud, this passage would be probably top 5 of the greatest hits. How many of you have heard of Hillel and Shammai? A few of you, probably Hillel a little bit more. Hundreds and hundreds of debates. Here's one little passage. For 3 years, the houses of Hillel and the houses of Shammai argued. One said, the judgment falls in our favor, and the other said, the judgment falls in our favor. Alas, a heavenly voice spoke from up above, said, these and these are the words of the living God, and the judgment, though, is like Hillel. Interesting. These and these are the words of God. Both arguments work, but we're going to pick Hillel. A question was raised. Since the heavenly voice declared, both these and those are the words of the living God, why was the judgment established to follow the opinion of Hillel? Why pick a side? The text says, it is because the students of Hillel were kind and gracious. They taught their own ideas as the ideas from the students of Shammai. They taught their own ideas as well as the ideas from the students of Shammai. Not only for this reason, but they went so far as to teach Shammai's opinions first. They taught their adversaries' opinions first. As the Talmud teaches, our faith supports a multiplicity of views, and it is the rabbi and the community who can partner in giving oxygen and light to healthy dissent and discussion. But we also know, not everyone comes to temple primed for or interested in vigorous debate. In fact, I bet that most of you are here for a variety of other reasons. We are one great mosaic of difference, and we step into this chapel with hopes of building fellowship, feeling connection with our beautiful faith. The rabbi's job is to know that, is to know why you're coming here, not just to hear what's on my mind. That would be nice, though, right, Rabbi? Okay. You come for the beautiful music, to feel part of a community, to find a solemn moment to say Kaddish. You may look forward to an opportunity to learn Torah or to escape from the everyday and the upsetting world outside of our synagogue walls. You come because, especially during dark times, you want to hear your rabbi's take on current events and social issues. Sanctuaries tend to be full after events like the Tree of Life shootings, but again, for different reasons, often comfort or a way to understand what has happened, or perhaps an opportunity to channel one's own anguish and anger through the rabbi's words. In a very polarized country, a rabbi must assume that there will be congregants who disagree, often vehemently, with what they have to say. At our best, rabbis should foster the openness of a diversity of ideas. It is in this openness that we can debate, casting off fears of being wrong for the reward of growth. Our identities should not be built on one unrelenting opinion alone. Sometimes we hold too tight to an idea or view, and by doing so, it inhibits us from grabbing hold of a better one or an improved version of the view we already have. We must not be afraid to test our ideas with rigor. And there are times for rabbi and layperson alike when we must take a stand, which can be unpopular, based on diligent discernment and a deeply felt calling. And that was Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver, who in the face of Jewish dissent fought for the creation of the state of Israel. Some of you may not remember or know or weren't around back then. Diaspora Jews did not believe that we needed a Jewish state in what was then called Palestine. The promised land was in the diaspora, here in America and other places in the world. Those rabbis of that time faced great dissent, great opposition. And that was Rabbi Arthur Lullyveld, who flatly was told by Fairmount Temple members that he was wasting his time going down to Mississippi to fight for the black vote. Yes, many Jewish Americans in the northern states did not want to get involved in the civil strife of the 60s, did not want their rabbis to get involved in that work. Sometimes we create revisionist history and we forget about the debates of the past. Perhaps if we zoom out 50, 100 years, we'll see how we rabbis did in our time. And just as our beloved rabbis of past times struggled and debated about the issues of the day, we too struggle and debate about the issues of our own lives. We consider the relationships that we seek to maintain and grow, and the moments when we must question, search, and even take a stand. This is the essence of the High Holy Days, to remain open to our own evolution as Jews and as people. Easy to say, hard to do. So the sounding of the shofar gives me hope. Its call is meant to wake us up, agitate us, and help us improve our behaviors as individuals, as people, as part of the human race. So in that regard, on a personal note, I want to take this opportunity to offer my apologies to each one of you. If or when I did not listen well, I did not respond to a need, or was insensitive to your words or views, I ask for forgiveness and pledge to strive for humility in my learnings and openness to your discernment. May 5786 be a year of release, of the hostages still kept in tunnels, of the innocent Palestinians from continued homelessness and starvation. And may this year invite learning, curiosity, discernment, and may it be filled with blessings for a good year for you and your families. Shana Tova. All right, folks. Continue with some music to let it all sink in.